Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate, just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
Would you welcome Miss Betty White? Certain people you feel have an affinity for.
That's nice. Old broads are the best, don't you think?
No, I didn't say that. No, I did do some jokes about you and Alan Ludden. That's true.
We loved it.
Did you really?
Oh, we loved it. We were giving a wife-swapping party and nobody would come. Over pretty good.
I may have said something like that.
We used to shower together just so we could play password in the shower.
I did.
Good morning. It's Monday, Moral Monday, October the 13th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company, motivation, meditation, and moral politics. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now, the end of Maria and the beginning of Varney and Company.
And Saudi Arabia, including to sign this peace accord. Elizabeth Pipko and Mitch Rochelle have been my guests this morning. Guys, I'm sorry we did not have enough conversation to mark this momentous day. We hope you'll come back soon. Thank you so much. Varney and Company picks it up right now. Ashley Webster in for Stu. Ashley, take it away.
Good morning, Maria. Thank you very much. And good morning, everyone. I'm Ashley Webster in today for Stuart Varney. Stu, though, never fear, will be back tomorrow. As Maria was just saying, just moments ago, President Trump addressing Israel's parliament as Hamas releases the remaining 20 living hostages as part of an historic peace deal brokered by the United States. And soon, President Trump will be heading to Egypt later this morning, where world leaders will be gathering for a Middle East peace ceremony. In the meantime, take a look at the markets. We had that big sell-off at the end of last week, but you know what? Let's take a look at the futures. So-so. The Dow is rebounding nicely, up 354 points. The S&P and NASDAQ also up nicely, more than 1%. Maybe we can gain back everything we lost last Friday in morning session today. And of course, these stocks are soaring after President Trump softened his tone on China tariffs. He said, it's okay, we'll be fine. It seems to be easing fears of a revived trade war with Beijing, but of course, every headline can change that. We'll get into it. Bitcoin, meantime, is back above 114,575. What about gold? I believe it's above 4,100 right there, up another $100, 4,102 per troy ounce. The government shutdown dragging into its third week. Both the House and Senate are out of town, so not much happening there. It is Monday, October the 13th. The bond markets are closed for Columbus Day, but equity markets are still open and running. Varney and Company.
And that was good old Ashley Webster, because Stuart has decided to take the day off. Why not? He's got to go home and count his money. Nonprofit news now. Back in a minute. Thank you. So this is a clip of John Kobylt from his podcast, and he is having a conversation or interviewing or helping. What he's really doing is helping Bill O'Reilly sell a book. But anyways, this a few seconds of this and comment.
To take control. That leads into my next question, because looking away means accepting the consequences here, and it's pretty stark. It's not just people have an ideology, a philosophy they've fallen in love with. The consequences of that ideology is massive homelessness, massive crime, high taxes, high gas prices, high housing costs, high electricity prices. It makes life much more difficult. Why doesn't that cause them to change their voting patterns?
Excellent question.
No, it's not. And this is, again, where John Kobylt is stupid. And I mean stupid. Everybody makes mistakes. Making the same mistake day after day after day after day, knowing something's wrong. Because every once in a while you'll hear him say, I don't get it. Why aren't things changing? Even right in this little conversation, he says, why aren't they changing their voting patterns? It never occurs to him that the people that are voting these Karen Bass and others into office are Democrats. And it never occurs to him that Democrats don't want the same things we do. Everything he just listed is a conservative issue. Those are what things that conservatives want. Property rights, first and foremost among those. Democrats, politically speaking, don't care about property rights. Existentially, of course they do. If you go out and squat on their property, they'll get you removed. But from a political perspective, from a voting perspective, it's not going to motivate them. If you go out to Democrats and say, hey, all your property's being destroyed, they just shrug their shoulders. But if you say to them, why are you voting for Karen Bass? She hasn't given you, she has polluted the earth. These fires have put billions and billions of tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Nobody has talked about that. The Los Angeles Times, we know why they don't want to talk about that, because they support Karen Bass. And talking about the carbon dioxide would have a tendency to make her look bad with her own constituents. So you got to speak the Democrats' language. You got to talk to them about the things they care about. They care about, supposedly, the environment, especially when it comes to global warming / climate change. John Kobylt should be all over that. John Kobylt should be every day reminding the Democrats how many tons of carbon dioxide that Karen Bass put into the atmosphere by allowing these fires. And if he does that, the Los Angeles Times will have to get involved. Karen Bass will have to get involved. They will Karen Bass will have to go to John Kobylt and say, I want equal time. I want to be interviewed on your show. When that happens, he becomes a player. Right now, John Kobylt is written off as a right-wing shock jock. That's the way they think of him. That's why they pay no attention to him and what he says. And he keeps preaching to the choir, the First Church of John Kobylt, to the people that already agree with him. Okay, that already vote the way he wants them to vote. The problem is that the First Church of John Kobylt is in the minority. He has to get his mind around that and start talking to the Democrats. And when he starts doing that, then he gets smart, he becomes influential, and then, and only then, there's a hope for Los Angeles and the state of California. Back in a minute. Thank you. So the so-called peace in the Middle East, it's not peace, it's a truce. As long as Hamas exists, there is no and will not be any peace. Okay. So Donald Trump is making the mistake of letting Hamas off the map. He should really read the 48 Rules of Power. In the book, The 48 Rules of Power, there's a chapter about when you defeat your enemy, you crush them utterly. You don't leave one single spark or ember. Because if you do, that spark or ember is going to come back to burn you. Okay, and I can't believe that he would negotiate with Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization. He actually sent a peace proposal to Hamas. This is the organization that, supposed organization that committed horrific crimes. Really, Hamas is nothing more than a mafia. It's just a criminal organization. That's all it is. Murderers, thieves, rapists, etc. And President Trump doesn't see that. I mean, God bless President Trump. I like him on a lot of other issues, but he just doesn't seem to understand power. He has no clue. And because of that, we're going to have a truce, and it's going to be, peace in that area for the time being. But in 6 months, a year, Hamas will have rearmed, regrouped, and the whole process will start over again. They'll start firing rockets, or they will send people in for another October 7th. If not on October 7th, then some other high holy day. And the Israelis will go back into Gaza and will be at it again. I've seen this pattern for my whole life, for decades, that this has been going on. Hamas attacks Israel. Israel reacts and invades Gaza. Then there's the cries for ceasefire, and then there's a peace deal. And then 6 months later, Hamas fires on Israel. Israel invades Gaza. And it just goes on and on and on. And it's too bad. But Donald Trump is a businessman. All he understands is business. He sees Gaza as the opportunity to put up hotels and golf courses. And I think that's the way he looks at the whole world. He said the same thing with North Korea, that he told the leader of North Korea, hey, you could have really nice resorts here in North Korea. And I'm sure Donald Trump would love to get the contract. But this isn't business. It's not even diplomacy. It's about brute force power, overwhelming power. And unfortunately, President Trump doesn't seem to understand that. And because of that, there's going to be more terrorism. It's just a question of when. 6 months, I think a year at the outside. Again, it's a truce. It's not peace. It's a truce. Back in a minute. Thank you. On a postscript, sort of, on President Trump's peace deal, the big winner here was not Israel, not even really Hamas. The big winner was the news media. As I said many months ago, Israel's real enemy is AP, UPI, Reuters, New York Times, Los Angeles Times, CNN, MSNBC, and what's the Arab Al-Shaboya or whatever the Arab news network is. That's Israel's real enemy, because it is the news media that has been sounding the alarm and creating the protests around the anti-Israel protests or anti-Jew protests around the country. And as I had said in the beginning, if you're an American president, I'm going to sit down with Netanyahu. I'm going to tell him, look, you want to go to war, knock yourself out, have a great time, kick their ass, destroy them, whatever. But realize that your real enemy is the news media. And the only way to deal with the news media is censorship. You have to censor them. There's only one way you can censor the news media, and that's in time of war. Okay, so Israel needed to find a way to declare war on Hamas so they could then censor the media. Once they do that, then there's not going to be any calls for a ceasefire. There's not going to be any talk about a genocide or any of the other crap that comes out of the news media, the anti-Jew news media. Let's put it that way. So again, Donald Trump has achieved to get a ceasefire and a truce. Good for him. But the real winner here is the news media, unfortunately. Back in a minute. Thank you. So on China, there is apparently China's talking all kinds of crap about trade and making all kinds of threats. China's a paper tiger. They need us more than we need them. They have people in first of all, they got a population that's enormous, of over 1 billion people in China. They may have 1 or 2 million people in the military, but that's not enough. That's not you can't control 1 billion people with a 1 or 2 million, army. So, but they're afraid. The government is afraid of their own people. Their people are looking for work. They're moving from the rural parts, from agrarian lifestyle to city life, to getting jobs, etc. And if those jobs dry up, they're afraid. The government is afraid that they're going to have a lot of angry people. And those angry people may end up rebelling or revolting against the government. That's what they're terrified of. So they can talk all the smack they want to. They're the ones that are in a tough spot. Again, they need the United States of America more than we need them. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Marine Le Pen.
J'en appelle à la sagesse et au bon sens des Français. Qu'on me donne une raison, une seule, pour garder sur notre territoire des étrangers qui collaborent avec une idéologie totalitaire qui veut la mort des Français. Les binationaux en lien avec l'idéologie islamiste doivent être déchus de leur nationalité et expulsés. Les Français qui adoptent l'idéologie de l'ennemi doivent être traduits devant les tribunaux et punis. Les lois existent, il suffit de les appliquer. Eh bien, moi, Présidente, ces lois seront appliquées sans faiblir. En quelques semaines, je vous le promets, la France aura pris toutes les dispositions nécessaires pour se mettre à l'abri des fichiers S et en totale conformité avec notre état de droit. Les mosquées radicales seront fermées, les prêcheurs de haine expulsés, les associations faunées du salafisme et des frères musulmans seront dissoutes. Avec moi, ayez la certitude que les droits des femmes aujourd'hui contestés par l'obscurantisme islamiste seront garantis à toutes les femmes de France. Avec moi, la sécurité n'ira pas à l'encontre de la liberté, en tout cas de la liberté des honnêtes gens. Je veux le dire et le répéter.
And that was Marine Le Pen. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, moral politics, the rest of chapter 18.
There is, however, a perspective from which these are not distortions. The argument that these are not distortions goes as follows. The central models are ideal models, in that they define what an ideal parent would do. But real people are not ideal. They slip up. And the question is, in what direction are they going to slip up? Will common slip-ups result in the wholesale use of pathological variants of the central model? For example, a strict parent may see an imperfect, nurturant parent as not having the time or patience or training or thoughtfulness to be properly nurturant. An imperfect, nurturant parent who is very busy may well wind up spoiling the child. Similarly, a nurturant parent may see an imperfect, strict parent as not having the restraint, empathy, awareness, or sobriety not to harm the child in punishing him. An imperfect, strict parent, especially someone who drinks, may well not have the judgment or restraint to keep from abusing the child. A strict parent, on such grounds, may see it appropriate and correct to stereotype the nurturant parent as spoiling. Similarly, a nurturant parent may see it as appropriate to stereotype the strict parent as abusive. It is not my purpose to justify such a use of pathological stereotyping. My only purpose is to note that it exists and discuss its logic. In order to use this justification, one would have to demonstrate that slip-ups are the norm, and that, in the typical case, a pathological variant is used despite good intentions. This kind of demonstration is rarely, if ever, given. The reason is clear. Pathological stereotyping is not done for the sake of being fair-minded. It is done for the sake of convincing people, fairly or not. I began this chapter with a discussion of pathological stereotyping of conservatives by liberals. I would like to conclude with two cases of pathological stereotyping of liberals by conservatives. Pathological stereotypes of liberals. Conservatives commonly characterize liberals in three ways. 1. As lovers of bureaucracy. 2. As defenders of special interests. And 3. As advocating only rights and no responsibilities, the permissive society. From the liberal perspective, all three are what I have called pathological stereotypes. First, bureaucracy. Liberals point out that they didn't invent bureaucracy. They inherited it. Bureaucracy was originally brought into government to replace a system of uncontrolled corruption, political favoritism, and unconstrained lobbying. But the dark aspects of bureaucracy, impersonality, and unthinking application of regulations, are as antithetical to liberalism as to conservatism. Neither is part of a nurturant government. Liberals argue further that President Clinton's Reinventing Government initiative will change the government in the direction of greatly limiting the bureaucratic dark side. Second, special interests. Liberals point out that what are called special interests by conservatives are, in liberal moral and political philosophy, special cases of serving the public interest, namely, through promoting fairness and other liberal ideals. What conservatives call special interests include groups seeking fair treatment, such as blacks, women, and ethnic minorities. Liberals further point out that conservatives have just as many special interests as a result of their philosophy, industries seeking tax breaks, an easing of environmental restrictions, and so on. Real cases of special interests, people seeking favors for themselves that have nothing to do with liberal moral and political philosophy, are anathema to liberals and violate the liberal commitment to social responsibility. Third, all rights and no responsibilities. Liberals point out that this is pathological in liberal philosophy. As we have seen, nurturant parent morality requires that rights and responsibilities go together. Any variant of liberalism that does not include responsibilities subverts the central model. Most liberals are very concerned with responsibilities. Liberals especially point to the large number of idealistic liberal groups and individuals who have been working for decades for the sake of social responsibility, not on behalf of their own rights. Pathological stereotypes of 60s liberals. Conservatives, and many people in the media, often represent the 60s generation using three stereotypes. 1. Eternal flower children. Hopelessly naive idealists who did nothing but place flowers in their hair, make peace signs, and put into practice the slogan, "Make love, not war." 2. Deadheads. Hedonists interested in nothing but sex, drugs, and rock and roll. 3. Violent radicals. Loudmouths spouting communist slogans, leading violent anti-government rallies, and preaching violent revolution. To members of the 60s generation, however, these are pathological stereotypes, perpetuated by the news media because they make good copy, and by conservatives because they serve conservative interests. From the perspective of most 60s liberals, all these were and still are pathological. 60s liberalism, to those involved in it, focused on social responsibility. 60s liberals see it this way. They risked their safety and their lives, and sometimes lost them, in civil rights demonstrations. They fought for anti-poverty programs and worked to establish them. They brought feminism and ecology into the mainstream, and they demonstrated courageously against what they saw as the immorality, duplicity, and downright foolishness of the federal government in conducting an immoral and ill-advised war in Vietnam. The people who did all these things were not flower children or deadheads or violent radicals. They were idealistic liberals who were self-disciplined, self-reliant, hard-working, and dedicated to American ideals. They were the very reverse of the stereotypes. To the typical but unheralded 60s liberals, the eternal flower children, deadheads, and violent radicals were pathological, just as they were to conservatives. That is why, to most 60s liberals, the use of those three stereotypes is pathological stereotyping. As we have seen in the previous chapters, there was something that united all these disparate themes of 60s liberalism. working for civil rights, against poverty, for feminism, for environmentalism, and against the killing of 2 to 3 million citizens of a small third-world country 10,000 miles away. What united them was nurturant parent morality applied to politics, the ideal of a nurturant society. That's what made them liberals. Nurturant parent morality, as we have seen, includes extremely important notions such as self-nurturance, taking care of oneself, self-development, developing one's potential, doing meaningful work, work that one finds personally fulfilling, and moral happiness, living a basically happy life, which is moral in that one's own joy is a gift to others, and in that basic happiness is a prerequisite for genuine empathy. This was the direction that the 60s generation went in during the 70s, when civil rights legislation had been passed, when feminist and environmental movements and anti-poverty programs had been established, and when the war was over. Liberals of the 60s generation turned both to developing themselves as nurturant individuals and to developing a nurturant society. Concerned with self-development, many turned to the human potential movement and to Eastern religions with meditative traditions. The requirement of self-nurturance brought many to a concern with health, physical development and natural foods, healing and therapy. The concern with moral happiness led to involvement with the aesthetic dimension of life, with art, with living in nature, with sensuality, and with forms of beauty in everyday life. The concern with meaningful work led many into professions like medicine, law, education, and architecture, where they could make a living, work for their social ideals, and practice their personal ideals. Conservatives, however, have seen all this from their own perspective, a perspective that can only make sense of such people as self-indulgent, hedonistic yuppies, selfish people interested only in their own pleasure and advancement. To 60s liberals, those that are internally oriented, this is a pathological stereotype. Within nurturant parent morality, taking care of oneself, self-development, and basic happiness, including an aesthetic sense, are moral values functioning in the service of general human well-being. Being self-indulgent and hedonistic is very different from developing one's potential, significantly in the service of others, taking care of oneself so others don't have to, and developing basic happiness, both in the service of empathy and as a gift for others. To an internally oriented 60s liberal, true self-indulgence and pure hedonism are pathological. They are subversive of social responsibility, which is a central tenet. To 60s liberals, the conservatives' characterization is a pathological stereotype. Few are innocent. Both liberals and conservatives engage regularly in pathological stereotyping. Liberals do it when they characterize conservatives as selfish, abusive fascists and tools of the rich. Conservatives do it when they characterize liberals as dedicated to bureaucracy, special interests, and rights without responsibilities. And when they stereotype 60s liberals as flower children, deadheads, violent radicals, and self-indulgent hedonists. What pathological stereotyping misses, of course, is morality, the opposing strict father and nurturant parent moral systems that lie behind central conservatism and liberalism. Pathological stereotyping may serve self-righteousness and propaganda, but it misses all moral understanding.
And that was the remainder of Chapter 18 from Moral Politics, How Liberals and Conservatives Think by George Lakoff. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there and reminding you that you are not neutral and that the government has no rights.